Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dentistry Unmasked. I am David Rice here, as always, with.
Hey everybody, Pam Maragliano-Muniz. I'm really excited for this week, David, because all right, so we've had our podcast for over a year and we've gotten pretty cool feedback from friends, colleagues, even strangers. I love when I'm at a conference and somebody's like, "Oh, hey, I know you from your podcast or whatever." And I just think that's super cool. So, thank you for everybody out there. But this is a little different because Erica, our guest, Erika Flateau, she listened to one of our podcasts and she said, you know what? I have something to say about this topic. And we decided, you know what? We need to have her on. So, Erika Flateau, welcome.
Thank you so much, and happy Friday to you indeed. And I am just so excited to be here with you both. It is an absolute honor to get to talk to you, and yeah, a little bit kind of fangirl in here a tiny bit because I love the conversation that you two bring. But I was listening to the podcast about why does your hygienist hate you? That's a very strong word, but I kind of like that you two just, you really aren't afraid to say, it's very relatable, very real, the conversations that you have. And it's like, yes, this is what everybody's thinking, but maybe nobody's saying. And so as a listener, I was like, oh, it was eating up the conversation. And then I heard Dr. Rice kind of start to go a level deeper. And I was like, yeah, let's deep dive into this because there's kind of some, underlying things that maybe aren't that surface level conversation as to what is going on with this dynamic.
Oh, I love that. Let's dive deep. All right. So tell us what you like, what struck you and where we need to start.
My vantage point, of course, is going to be my perspective is a hygienist of all these years. So, gosh, I've been
Yeah.
practicing 23 years, almost completely full time that whole time. And I'm someone that stays with the practice for a long time, but I've worked with several doctors and had an opportunity to, temp here and there, but mostly longevity with private practice. And I heard a conversation that was starting out, and a lot of conversation about what is going on with dentists and hygienists has this surface level of just, they don't respect me, I don't respect them, they don't respect me, or I'm not feeling respected. And I think that, Doctor, you started to touch on a deeper psychological need that might help explain some of the doctor's behavior that we can't quite understand. And when you touched upon that, I was like, yes, that's where we need to go. And I'm no psychologist, but you said something about the doctor needing approval. Some doctors feeling as though there's this need to be everybody's friend. And when you said that, I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere because then that's going to help me as the hygienist understand this business owner and this practitioner better. And we're in the we're in customer service, unlike a lot of medical dentistry. We want return customers. People do have a choice. And so when you said that, I was like, tell me more. I wanted to hear more of your thoughts.
Damn, I'm on the spot.
I know. I was like, ooh, punted right back to you. David, tell
Whew,
us, why do we need approval?
it's getting late. I gotta go.
It's Friday. I'm done.
I think it's interesting, right? Because for me, it's always the chicken or the egg when people talk about like, oh, dentistry has all these issues. I'm like, do you think dentistry maybe attracts a certain kind of persona? And I do. I think dentistry attracts people. We absolutely want to help people. We're working in this tiny little space. People are not afraid to voice their opinions of us, and maybe they're genuine. I'd rather be doing anything other than be here in your chair. So I think there are a lot of dentists out there who they're trying so hard to be everybody's friend. And if you said approval is their number one addiction, it probably is. We just want to be liked. And that gets us into trouble because we tend to make worse decisions when we're just trying to do something to be liked as opposed to when something is positively impacting our team and our practice.
Mhm.
Can I add something to that too? I think that dentistry, depending on how and where you practice, is kind of lonely. And so if you're in a solo practice, you're the only dentist, you're the practice owner, you look at the people you work with, yes, technically and legally and all the things, they are your employees, but they're the only people you see all day long. Your team, they're your team.
Yeah.
And, you know, we've been talking about ad nauseum since COVID, this concept of creating culture and making the workplace a happier place and a better place and an attractive place for people to want to work. Well, you can't do it all. And you can't really create an awesome culture and have an attractive workplace to work in if you're an asshole, but I think a lot of people feel like, well, I have to be a certain way or have a certain distance to be the employer. So it's like you almost have to pick one. Do you want to be, have a distance and, be a little disconnected from your team? Or if you want to be connected to your team, it sort of like blurs that lines from employer to coworker, team worker, to, work friend.
Right. And understanding each other has such a long way to go, because as the doctor is asking the hygienist to, okay, I need you to think a little more like a business owner, or I need you to think a little more like a co-diagnoser. And I really would like you to have more of a comprehensive look at your patient rather than just treating their their cleaning need for that day, or only looking at them periodontally. I want you to look at them structurally, comprehensively, restoratively. And I need you to kind of tee me up when I come in. And the hygienist really will grow and become more of an asset if he or she does that. However, they're never going to 100% think like the business owner, because their legacy, their kids aren't going to be paid, to go to college by the success of this business. They're not going to have a family wealth from it. They are there as a piece of what makes the practice successful, but they're not going to benefit from the big success of the business long term. So them understanding their place, and the way that I figured it out for myself is, if I want access to patients to take great care of them, I have to be somewhere that's successful. And so it helped me understand the business owner a little bit better, which I think, like you said, can feel very lonely, because you're working with all these people on your team that don't get you, and they don't understand your worries and your concerns. And I sometimes have found myself thinking about how I'm just not being seen and heard, and how I'm not being valued. And when we flip it and we try to understand, hey, this doctor took the risk, this doctor opened these doors, this doctor got the education, they took on the debt, they provide me with this place to take great care of people. It started to shift my my understanding of maybe where they might be coming from.
So what can the dentist owner do to help team members feel that, see that, understand that?
Great question. So when your hygienist wants to perform and think more like a business owner and think more like an associate for you, then he or she is going to want to, co-diagnose or find more a deeper understanding of the care or the steps we're going to take with this patient. But if they're getting up 2 or 3 times to chase after you for an exam, their concentration's broken. Something's going to give. I would feel like I would feel unseen and forgotten about. And then I get frustrated. And then by the next exam, it's like, why even try? So this exam thing has been such a funny situation, because we all talk about it. We joke about it. And I've worked with many doctors over the years, but I have a question for you doctors. Why does every doctor avoid exams like the plague? But then once they get in the room, they have the time of their life and don't want to leave.
I can answer that. I feel
All
like,
right.
every patient we see, hygiene, for example, I mean, and I don't want to belittle hygiene. I love hygienists, all the things. If you miss a piece of calculus, is it the end of the world? People going to move on with life? You're going to get it next time or whatever else. When you're in the middle of bonding something, you can't get up
Mhm.
and stop. You can't, there's things that we do in dentistry that you can't shorten that procedure. Like you have to bond for X amount of seconds. You need to go through these steps. Like, so we have things that are happening during our appointments that sometimes you just cannot get up.
100%.
And also you can't skip. And so there are just times that you're just gonna have to wait. And so, I mean, I tell my hygienists when they come and get me, and they don't get me 3, 4, 5 times, but sometimes they have to wait,
Sure.
is, you know, hey, I just started bonding. I will be there. Just it's going to be a couple of minutes. And they're like, okay. And they skip off and, know that they got to show the patient videos or schedule their appointment or do the different things. I think
Yeah.
also you have to have this conversation with your hygienist as well. Like, don't
Mhm.
come get me the second you need me. I want you to come get me when you still have to book the appointment. Like you still have a couple things you need to do, but you're giving me the heads up. I think also it starts at the huddle. We
Mm.
talk about who needs an exam, who needs these things, and I'm always looking at the time. So if my hygienist gets me, we say, for example, you schedule on the hour, and they're coming to get me at like 35 after the hour, and they have an hour-long appointment, I'm like, y'all can wait because
Mm.
you're blowing through this appointment too quickly. If you're getting me at 40, 42, 43, all right, yeah, I'll come because, you know, we all have things to do. I get that. So I feel like it depends on what's going on. Or there are times where I'll prep a tooth and I will get up before I place the restoration and I might interrupt the hygienist to do that. But just as you said, you don't want to get your concentration broken and all of those things. It's the same with us. And also, gosh, there's times you have multiple hygienists working, and there's nothing more stressful than being in the middle of something you can't stop and do, or you
Mhm.
can't stop. And then I know I've got 3 people waiting for me. I'm like, this day's never going to end. So
Yeah.
I feel like we both have a valid perspective on this. And I feel like, yeah, I think that we, it looks like we have all the time in the world and we want to spend all this time during our exam, which I know drives hygienists crazy. But it's all about the patient. We don't want the patient to think that I don't have time for you. I'm going to rush in, do your exam as quickly as I can and get the hell out of there because nobody's got time for this. I feel like we almost overcompensate. So I made you wait. Now I'm going to chat with you and make you know that I think you're valuable. Your time's valuable. You're valuable. I value all the things. So now I'm just going to spend all of this time doing this. And I think that's what we do to make up for the fact that we made you and the patient wait, even though we know you just want to kick us out.
Well, that's super vulnerable for you to say that because then that helps us understand, like, why are you now taking more time? Because there's this thing going on inside of you that is feeling like now you have to make up to this person that has waited for you. And what a great understanding for us to get why, when you do finally come in, you're taking that time to really be present with them. And I think everything you said was really reasonable. But I do approach it at this point in my career a little differently because I don't want you in the middle of that composite. So I will say, hey, I need you to trust me. I will not come and get you unless I have everything, reviewed from last visit. You can actually see the teeth. There's not so much plaque on there. I've taken a photo. I've done the x-ray. Whatever is needed, I won't come and get you before that. But once I have what I need, would you trust me enough to say, even if it's 15 minutes into the appointment, like, and I'll just go anytime, and I'll say anytime. And then that cues my doctor into really anytime. And then if it's getting to be like 45 minutes into the appointment, I will go and say, I'm ready for you. So there, we've kind of come up with our own little code to signal, you've got some flexibility or it's time now. But when I have gone and a doctor's in their office, for instance, and everything they're doing is important, but I'm like, hey, guy, if you're running 3 hygienists today, you got to do this office work on Friday or whatever. I'm like, there is always somewhere for you to be if you've got 2 or 3 of us going. So just please come to us and say, can I interrupt? Is it okay? And we will happily back away from that patient. I mean, at least I will. Maybe you've been shooed away before, I don't know. But if I know you're about to start a procedure, I would happily like you to come in and let's get this done so we can all de-stress. How does that work for you?
I'll tell you what, I like what both of you have said, and the two things that like caught my attention where, and I work basketball. First is trust. I think
Mhm.
we have to trust each other that we're each bringing our best self with the patient's and the practice's best interest. And that's a way easier thing to say than to do in the heat of the moment. And
Yeah.
if my partner Mark were listening to this, he'd be like, "Oh, do as you say, not as you do, David." Because I'm like the first person who's guilty of like in the middle of it all, of just not having it all together. So, but I think that's a part of it, and maybe what helps build trust. Pam, you said something that was I thought was so important, and that is our ability to maybe frame the story to each other and then frame the story to the patient. Like, hey, I'm in the middle of, because I know, again, guilty of like assuming you're reading my mind. And even though like why are you not looking over my shoulder and just figuring out what I'm doing? Well, my big giant noggin's in the way, and if mine isn't, Holly's is, and if hers isn't, the patient's is. But if I can share like, hey, we just started bonding, so it's gonna take some time, but I'll get there as soon as I can.
Mhm.
I'm betting if I'm willing to intentionally voice those things out loud, that probably is going to be better received, and probably vice versa. If
Mhm.
Shannon or Emily or Lynn are like, hey, this is where I am, and framing the story to me too, I think in our best scenario it works like that. And then in the other scenarios, I think if we trust, like, okay, this is, we're all trying to do the best that we can here, so we're just going to get through this thing, and just know like 80% of the time it works out the way this is supposed to, and 20% of the time it's going to be a bit of a shit show, but we like each other, we trust each other, it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
And you know what? Sometimes I'm not coming. I have news for you. I'm not
Yeah.
coming. And so I feel like we usually set the tone during the huddle that, I'm in the middle of bonding veneers. Guess what? I'm not moving. If I'm in the middle of things that are, really, really technique sensitive, isolation is key. I'm not getting up. And so sometimes my hygienists will get me and I'll say, it's a no for me today. Everything okay? They're like, yep. And I'll be like, you tell them I say hello. I miss them and I will catch them next time 100%.
Yes.
Or if they're like, I really need you for something, I'll be like, either they're going to have to wait or you know what? They can always come back. And so I just feel like instead of waiting till it's 59 before and your next patient's been waiting for 10 minutes, I feel like, having that conversation is important. Another thing that I find amazing and I take for granted is that hygienists don't really know what's going on in the dental operatory. And we want them to comprehensively look at patients and co-diagnose and do all of these things. Yet it's actually really fun when my hygienist, so I always invite them. I'm like, look, if you have a cancellation or something and you don't have, you've restocked your room or you've, done whatever you need to do, come and hang out with us and
Mhm.
watch what we're doing because I personally still find it fascinating. And I've been practicing for a long time. What a decay looks like on an x-ray and what it actually looks like when you cut into the tooth. I still just find that to be like the eighth wonder of the world. I just think it's so fun to see like how that translates once you get into the tooth. And so I just think it's so funny. My hygienists are like, wow, what is that thing? And I'm like, a composite warmer? And they're like, oh my gosh, you're so bougie. And they're like, they don't even know that. And I was like, I have no idea that things that we take for granted in the restorative rooms, hygienists might not even realize that we're doing. And I think that number one, it helps with that trust and that relationship when a hygienist understands the different steps that a dentist has to take to pursue their procedures. But I also think that it makes you a better hygienist. I feel like it gets you to see, what we're doing, our perspective of things. And I think it also will ultimately transcend to the patient because my hygienist is like, did you know that Dr. Pam has like a composite warmer? And do you even know what that does? Oh, it's amazing. And patients are like, wow, that's weird, but so cool. Like, I mean, but I feel like
Like it's
I
all
don't
warm.
even like I would never even talk about that other than being like, is it on? And my assistant's like, yep. And we don't really celebrate it the way my hygienists do. So there's
Mhm.
such an opportunity in having mutual trust, mutual admiration, mutual respect, and
Yes.
also mutual curiosity
Mhm.
into what each of us do during our appointments.
Hmm.
Yes, and as your hygienist, doctors, it is totally, when we have your back that way. We will say you can't make it in, it's going to be relayed to our patient like, oh, they are so sorry they missed you today. They're in the middle of a procedure, or we had a dental emergency come in or something, and they're very sorry they missed you today. But we're going to make sure that when you are back next visit, we make a note that you'll have an exam, or everything looks great. I filled her in. We have no concerns today. We're going to be taking that full series of x-rays next time. She will be in to check you then. But having your back and making sure that our patient in our chair isn't feeling like they got skipped, or that they were less important than somebody in your chair. And it's all about managing the patient's perception that way. And we really, can do that for you. And I think that, like you said, that's a huge part of the trust. Because if we trust, like, there's a good reason that you can't come in. It's not just because you're like on your phone in your office, because you do see that. And it's kind of, that wouldn't be anything that I know the two of you would do, but and ignore your hygienist. But it does happen out there, and that's where hygienists maybe be listening to this and go, yeah, my doctor's not always in the middle of something that important. I feel like I'm not, a priority. And so if there is a situation going on and you're that type of doctor that is, if you say you're busy. So, and we can trust that. And that's where we can come back and effortlessly and without it, very authentically tell our patient, hey, she cannot come in today, she really missed seeing you, everything looks great, blah 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 blah. And they'll feel that from us because we believe it. And so, I've learned, when you talk about curiosity, I have learned so much in exams. So even though you're there for the patient and you're explaining to the patient what you see and what you recommend, and we're trying to learn your philosophy and co-diagnose with you, I do get curious, and I don't spend enough time in the restorative rooms. You're right. And I don't know if we have a composite warmer or not, but, but I do listen in on the exams, and poke my head in and go, what are you looking at? Why are you saying that? And learning my doctor when they recommend something and when they don't, it and all the different doctors that I have worked with over the years. And sometimes they disagree about something or they do agree. And then you can kind of form your own beliefs based on how that patient fared under their care. It's been such an education for me, those periodic exams.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Okay, so I'm going to totally geek out and share a team meeting that we do every single year in our practice that maybe both of you ladies do as well. But we have one meeting where the first half of the day, people literally shift and position themselves in places
Oh,
where they don't work. Now, clearly, can't have a non-hygienist doing hygiene things, but we can have hygiene up front. We can have upfront assist. We can have assisting go up front and vice versa. So you can really kind of move people around. It has so helped our team over the years appreciate what's happening in the other room because it's so this is a trust thing. It's so easy to like randomly walk into a room in the like 5 seconds somebody has to breathe and be like, there they are, screwing around again. I'm dying a slow death in my room, and they're like whooping it up in here. Right? Because we've all done that. We've walked up front, front has walked in the back, and we just assume everybody's life is, a piece of cake, but ours. So that team meeting, we do that in the morning, and then we have like a longer lunch, and we're like, okay, so what do we learn? And the shocking thing that we re-experience every single year is like, I'm so glad I don't answer phones. I'm so glad I'm not in hygiene. I'm so glad I'm not sitting next to you all day. That's for sure. And it's so helpful. So try it if you haven't, listeners.
well, in that vein, after COVID and with our 10%, I guess, loss of workforce and hygiene, some doctors have gotten a big taste of hygiene. So, what have you heard from your colleagues about that? Is it good, bad? Any perspective shifts?
Ooh, Pam, do you want to start? Or do you want me to start? I don't care.
I have nothing nice to say. I don't know. I feel like I mean, and again, I just have a bias, and it's just a bias because I went to dental hygiene school. I obviously went to dental school. I have lived the difference in the education when it comes to periodontal management. And a dentist is not a hygienist. They're just not. And so when a dentist is like, I'm doing all my own cleanings, I'm like, ugh, you called it a cleaning. You're doing it yourself. The whole situation just sounds awful. So, but again, I'm biased. So sorry.
No, I'll second that. I think here's what and if you're listening and you disagree with me, I challenge you to say it out loud, then keep it to yourself and be like, that David Rice, what a jerk. Hygieneless dental practices only work when you're referring those hygiene patients to a periodontal practice, not dentist sitting down and doing it. My first day when I bought my first practice, Lynn, if you're listening, I love you so much, sat me down as a hygiene team member and said, you are an amazing dentist. Do your thing. I'm an amazing hygienist. Will you let me do my thing? And I'm like, whoa. First of all, love it. Second of all, hell yes. And then, over the last 30 years, every day I've watched every hygiene team member in our practice do things that I'm like, yeah, my 100 on the perio boards was a joke. So dentist, your 100 on the perio boards, it was a joke. We don't know what our hygienists know. We can't do what they do.
No.
Well, and that may be where some of the animosity comes from, because even though, again, hygienists, we cannot work completely unsupervised. We can't diagnose. We need our doctors to provide the facility and the patients so we can take care of people and leave our legacy of doing that in our lives. But we are we're specialists governed by another profession. So it's interesting. That might be where some of it comes from. Thoughts on that?
Can I switch gears for a second along the same lines? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that, yeah, I agree with you 100%. But you know who's laughing right now? Like literally belly laughing, getting the last laugh?
Insurance companies?
No,
I'm
no.
just kidding.
Biofilm.
Mhm.
Biofilm has the last laugh because we're still doing 6-month prophies. Maybe we won't be fighting about stupid periodic exams and waiting for your doctor and getting interrupted if you just do the 3-month prophy. Biofilm takes 3 months to mature. If you're doing a 6-month prophy, you are chasing disease, you're chasing bleeding, you're chasing inflammation, and you have to do a periodic exam every friggin' time. If you see patients before biofilm matures, patients are healthier. Hygienists have an easier time making it through their appointments. They're treating healthier patients, so their bodies are healthier. Ergonomics are better. They're not killing their shoulders, their backs, their wrists, and all of the things. And you don't even need the doctor every single appointment. So guess what? You even get a break. So, like, there's
Amen.
science that supports
Yeah.
making our lives easier, yet we choose to make our lives harder by accepting what, the toothpaste commercial from the 50s suggested. We're still doing that in 2025. So if that is what we're doing and we're going to continue to fight with hygienists over periodic exams, maybe we need to change our systems. I just need to step off my soapbox, but I had to say it.
Don't
That's awesome.
Yeah, don't step off that. I'll be honest
Yeah.
with you. Like I get my teeth cleaned 4 times a year,
Hmm.
cleaned, right? Sorry. Anastasia would shoot me for saying that word too. But I go in for my recare every 90 days because I do know the science. And the reality is if I go there and I show up and I have what needs to be done, I
Hmm.
am always healthy to your point. So why would we
Right.
not bring our patients in and do that? Like what's the real reason? And I think it comes back to that whole approval addiction that we started with, really. You want to come 360? We're afraid to tell people what they really should be doing.
So if your hygienist can just really run with the periodontal conversation, I have no problem doing that. And I just need you to come in and confirm, and we have agreements about that. Absolutely. Why wait for 3-month recare until disease is active? Why not get people more often? And well, out here on the West Coast, if of course insurance or benefits, we don't want to talk about that, but Our Washington Dental Services is allowing 3-month pro fees. It's unbelievable. It's wonderful. And so, but if you're fee for service, then regardless of insurance, we're going to obviously have the same conversations with our patients and never let the insurance dictate what we recommend. But you're right. If you're doing more active therapy and you're doing more reevaluations and you're doing more scaling and root planing and perio maintenance and 3-month pro fees, you're not going to need your doctor every single hour. And then if you're doing block scheduling, you can even be very strategic. Of course, if somebody cancels the day before, you try to put in anybody. But if you're block scheduling and you really get specific about your hygienists, they really don't have to have exams next to each other. Or maybe you want all your exams in the morning and you have a big case in the afternoon or something like that. Are either one of you doing block scheduling that way with hygiene?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
100%. So, I mean, it sounds like there are more intelligent solutions than what the average dental practice is bringing to the table. And if we sit back and we work on our people and we work on our process, and the whole production thing gets a whole lot easier, like we might just get along better, Pam.
How about that? There's something to be said for that. Your hygienist doesn't have to hate you.
No, and you two are you're a very good example of how that could be. There are things out there that are happening in practices that you're not witnessing because you're running your practice in a really awesome way. There are hygienists that are being asked to, clock out where they write their notes or take a reduced rate, or don't let me see you eating a granola bar every single minute has to be with a patient, or there lights the doctor's hair on fire. And it's like, well, you really want your hygienist refreshed, hydrated, fed. If she has to, call her kids really quick so she can put her mind at ease and do what she needs to do because something happened at school, it's okay. And and with the wage issue and the difficulty finding hygienists, doctors in some cases can just be like, oh my gosh, do they know what I'm paying them? They need to maximize every single moment with patient time, produce. And if there's a cancellation or something, it's just game over. And so I think that looking at the big picture and understanding that if your hygienist is able to do the things that he or she needs to do, they are going to be able to show up better for their patients and be far more productive in the long run. It's just keeping that big picture vision rather than being really, narrow-minded about it. So I don't know, if your hygienist has a cancellation and you're asking them to come in and see restorative being done, that is amazing, because it's not putting $1 in the pocket that day, but in the big picture, they're going to be able to understand and co-diagnose your dentistry and advocate for your dentistry more with your patients. And they are ultimately your patients, and we're taking care of them. They're the practice's patients. So that, I just want both of you to know that there's a lot of that that's going on, and I think that your hygienists are very fortunate to work for doctors like you that are seeing it, and hopefully we can spread that to other offices.
Agree. Totally appreciate that. Pam, where does the time go, for goodness sakes?
It flies when you're having fun. So
it does. It's out of
Erika,
control.
this has been such a great conversation, and I appreciate the follow-up, with our previous podcast. So where can people find you, follow you, get in touch with you?
Oh, well, I absolutely love helping other hygienists, especially the new grads that are, struggling with time management or just want to know some tips and tricks. They can email me at erikaflateau@gmail.com. And I would be happy to help anyone that would like to understand more. And I also have a website, renewconsultingservices.com.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. And I appreciate for, having this conversation and continually, hopefully trying to improve the relationships between hygienists and dentists. So
Thank you,
David,
doctors.
thank you so
Yeah.
much. This was really fun. So I look forward to seeing you in person soon. And I
Yes.
definitely would love to see you again over here on Dentistry Unmasked. And for everybody out there, thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at Ignite DDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to dentistryunmaskedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.